The links between the ocean's chemistry and the atmosphere are direct, unequivocal, and well understood.
If you look at climate change in its entirety, you look at global warming, ocean acidification, you would have to conclude that it's the most serious threat that coral reefs are facing right now.
Though carbon dioxide naturally exists in our environment, when we burn fossil fuels, we release an enormous amount of excess carbon dioxide into the atmosphere that would not otherwise exist, and nature doesn't have the capacity to process and rebalance.
CO2, when it goes into the atmosphere, also goes into the ocean. And when it goes into the ocean, it reacts with water and creates a dilute acid. Now, the acid isn't the big problem, it's what the acid does to something called carbonate. Now, if you look at corals, they're made of something called calcium carbonate, which is a rock-like material. And by acidifying the water, we're dropping the amount of carbonate that the corals have, and therefore they can't make their skeletons anymore. And this is probably going to be one of the bigger problems we face this century.
When carbon dioxide enters the water column, it reacts and forms into carbonic acid, leading to acidification of the ocean. Almost as soon as it's formed, the carbonic acid breaks down to become hydrogen carbonate and a single hydrogen ion. The ability to give off hydrogen ions demonstrates its nature as an acid. These freed hydrogen ions are naturally reactive and seek out something stable to attach to. So they essentially leach into the carbonate ions that already exist in the water column to become more stable, forming additional hydrogen carbonate. Without calcium carbonate, coral cannot grow or rebuild, essentially leading it to dissolve, erode, and disappear over time. The more carbon dioxide that is absorbed by the seawater, the more hydrogen ions are formed, therefore reducing the amount of calcium carbonate available to sea life.
There are people that say that, well, actually reefs can change much more quickly and corals will migrate towards the North and South Pole. Unfortunately, those ideas don't hold up to scrutiny. Coral reefs won't migrate to the poles because of the problem of acidification, which as you go towards the poles gets more and more intense. There's no calcium carbonate for them to make their skeletons, and so the whole thing grinds to a halt. One of the things that people don't quite appreciate is the rate of climate change. If you just take the rate at which CO2 is rising in the atmosphere right now, it's about 100 to 1,000 times as fast as the fastest periods over the last probably a couple of million years.
If carbon dioxide levels are not urgently limited to 350 parts per million in the air worldwide, the reef-building corals will simply erode into the surrounding sea, and the consequences will impact everyone on the planet.